Check out how you can get those solar panels installed at your home or residence by going to onesolarsolution.com. Bringing you the world news coming up next. This is Radio Caravan, the world news read by Shabnam Modgil. The United States begins 3 days of tributes to Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg today, when members of the public will get the chance to pay their respects to her under the monumental Corinthian columns atop the court's front steps. Ginsburg, who over the course of her long legal career championed gender equality and other liberal causes, in recent years became something of a pop icon for the American left. Crowds of mourners packed the court steps after her death on Friday at the age of 87. After 2 days of public viewing at the court, Ginsburg will, this Friday, become the first woman to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol when her casket is placed in the National Statuary Hall. She will lie in repose for 2 days at the court, where she served for 27 years and before that argued 6 cases for gender equality in the 1970s. Following a private ceremony today in the court's Great Hall, her casket will be moved outside the building to the top of the court's front steps so that public mourners can pay their respects in line with public health guidance for the pandemic. With President Trump poised to nominate a U.S. Supreme Court justice to fill the vacancy created by the death of this liberal icon, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a new 6-3 conservative majority could be emboldened to roll back abortion rights. The death of the Supreme Court justice has raised concerns among reproductive rights advocates that women could lose the right to choose whether to have an abortion, with President Trump poised to name another conservative justice to the nation's top court. As the United Nations marks its 75th anniversary with a pandemic-era summit conducted virtually, President Trump used the occasion yesterday to excoriate China, accusing it of unleashing the coronavirus on the world, even as the U.S. deaths from the disease have passed 200,000. As the U.S. passed that grim milestone, coronavirus-related deaths, Vice President Mike Pence sent his condolences to victims and their families, while also saying things could have been worse. Johnson & Johnson today has kicked off a final 60,000-person trial of a single-shot COVID-19 vaccine that potentially would simplify distribution of millions of doses compared with leading rivals using 2 doses. Air Force Two, the airplane used to fly the vice president, was struck by a bird as it took off from a New Hampshire airport last night, forcing it to return safely to the nearby airport. And the bird hit one of the engines of the aircraft, which was carrying Vice President Mike Pence and some staff. Cindy McCain, the widow of Senator John McCain, became the latest prominent Republican voice to back a Democratic presidential nominee, Joe Biden, in his bid to wrest the White House from President Trump in November's elections. The Department of Justice has designated New York City, Seattle, and Portland, Oregon as jurisdictions that permit anarchy, violence, and destruction, a distinction that the Trump administration hopes to use to strip those cities of federal funding. Louisville, Kentucky is under a state of emergency as prosecutors are expected to announce if police officers who killed a black woman in her home during a drug raid will be charged. NASA has released its $28 billion plan to land the first woman and the next man on moon in 2024. The mission, part of NASA's Artemis plan, would mark the first time humans would land on the lunar surface since 1972. An international police sting has led to the arrest of almost 180 dark web vendors. A total of 500 kilograms of drugs, $6.5 million, and 64 firearms have also been seized. The FBI Director Chris Wray said the bust came at a critical time as the pandemic has come with a spike in opioid overdoses. Mexico's militarized crackdown on organized crime has left nearly 39,000 unidentified bodies in the country's morgues, which are often unable to handle the volume of corpses brought in for autopsies. The United States and the United Arab Emirates hope to have an initial agreement on the sale of F-35 stealth fighter jets to the Gulf state in place by this December, as the Trump administration studies how to structure a deal without running afoul of Israel. The first known direct commercial flight between Israel and Bahrain landed today in the island kingdom, just a week after it signed a deal alongside the United Arab Emirates to normalize relations. And Israel reported a new record level of daily cases of coronavirus shortly before government officials were to meet to discuss tightening a new nationwide lockdown. Palestine has quit its current chairmanship of the Arab League meetings, and the Palestinian foreign minister condemned as dishonorable any Arab agreement to establish formal relations with Israel. An arms depot of the Iran-backed Shiite Muslim group Hezbollah has exploded in southern Lebanon. injuring several people and sending a new shockwave across a nation grappling with its deepest crisis in 3 decades. A number of Taliban prisoners who were released by the Afghan government as a condition for peace talks have taken up arms again, according to top official Abdullah, who chairs Afghanistan's High Council for National Reconciliation and is overseeing the government's peace efforts. Police in Kabul have seized a stash of pen guns that they say criminals and insurgents are using in a wave of targeted assassinations that has gripped the Afghan capital in recent months. Turkey said the European Union's sanctions on a Turkish firm accused of breaking a UN arms embargo on Libya displayed the European Union's double standards and biased stance. And President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus has assumed his 6th term of office today during an inauguration ceremony that officials did not announce in advance after weeks of mass protests against the authoritarian leader's re-election, which opposition activists maintained was rigged. And health authorities in Madrid may extend to more communities the restrictions on movement it imposed on areas of the Spanish capital with high coronavirus infection rates. About 860,000 Madrid residents already are required to justify trips out of 37 neighborhoods, mostly working-class areas. Ministers have warned of 7,000 truck-long queues in Kent after the Brexit transition period ends as a worst-case scenario if hauliers fail to prepare for changes to custom rules. In this news out of Britain, and Britain says it has turned over to U.S. authorities evidence against 2 members of an alleged terror cell known as the Beatles, ending a drawn-out legal battle to block the handover of that information. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been discharged from a German hospital after more than a month of treatment for poisoning with a Soviet-era nerve agent. The outspoken 44-year-old critic of Russian President Putin discharged after 32 days in a Berlin hospital, most of them spent in intensive care. Russia's new flagship nuclear-powered icebreaker, said to be the world's largest and most powerful, left a shipyard headed for the Arctic. The massive ship is the physical representation of President Putin's ambition to increase Russia's presence in that remote region. And a Russian frigate was collided with the Marshall Islands flagged container ship off Copenhagen. According to Denmark's Navy this morning, weather reports show that there was thick fog in the area at the time of this collision today. And a tropical storm in the Pacific Ocean is slowly approaching the Tokyo region, and officials are urging residents to take precautions early from expected heavy rain and gusts as tropical storm Dolphin headed north over waters south of the Hachijo Island, packing sustained winds of up to 108 kilometers per hour, according to the Japanese Meteorological Agency in Tokyo. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. And Indonesia's President Joko Widodo used his first address to the United Nations General Assembly to warn today that global stability and peace could be destroyed if growing geopolitical rivalries persist. And the Philippine president got rare praises from his key critics for invoking before the United Nations a 2016 arbitration ruling that invalidated China's vast territorial claims in the South China Sea in a surprise move that likely piqued Beijing. And Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen praised the heroic performance of Air Force pilots who have been intercepting Chinese jets that have approached the island. The construction of 11 buildings by China in a part of the remote border district with Nepal, claimed as its own territory, that has triggered a border row between the two countries. China will aim to hit peak emissions before 2030 and for carbon neutrality by 2060, according to President Xi Jinping, outlining the steps when speaking by a video link to the UN General Assembly in New York. And Chinese President Xi Jinping as he addressed the assembly amid escalating tensions with India at Ladakh. And although India and China have agreed to stop sending more troops to Ladakh frontline, New Delhi is prepared for a long haul of multiple rounds of military diplomatic talks before a firm political understanding is reached between the two sides and complete disengagement. Saudi Arabia has suspended air travel to and from India, Brazil and Argentina in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. And with the passage of 25 bills and introduction of 6 others, the Rajya Sabha records showed 100% productivity during this monsoon session that has held amid the COVID-19 pandemic. 200 days since the first case was reported, Tamil Nadu has registered over 5,000 fresh cases and 76 deaths. But it is Delhi and Mumbai that have seen a relatively low spike of cases of coronavirus. The 2 largest cities in India are also among the worst COVID-19 hit regions. But as many as 253 personnel of Maharashtra police have tested positive for COVID-19, while 5 of them succumbed to the infectious disease in the last 24 hours. Rain has disrupted normal life in Mumbai, and actor Riya Chakrabarti's lawyer said the Bombay High Court's Chief Justice has declared a holiday today due to these heavy rains, and her and her brother's plea for bail will be heard now tomorrow. Kolkata Knight Riders opening their campaign in this season of the IPL against the Mumbai Indians today, and the Rajasthan Royals beat the Chennai Super Kings by 16 runs in a high-scoring match that saw 33 sixes being hit. The Trump administration's nominee for ambassador to Pakistan has said that Islamabad must take sustained and irreversible action against terrorism. William Todd said he will actively engage Pakistan on terrorism, strategic stability and non-proliferation if he is confirmed. Prime Minister Imran Khan appreciated Turkish president's once again raising his voice in support of the rights of the Kashmiri people during his address to the UN General Assembly. And that's all I have in the news today. Bringing you the world news coming up next.